America, the land of dreams and nightmares you can't escape. There are places you won't find on any travel guide, houses where no one dares to spend more than 3 nights, stories whispered from one generation to the next, not for entertainment but as warnings. Deep in the forests, along quiet country roads, and behind seemingly peaceful towns lie secrets waiting to be uncovered. Tonight, you'll hear 10 of the most chilling real horror stories from across the United States. They are disturbing, they are unforgettable, and they are very, very real. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and prepare yourself. Because when the darkness settles in, the things you hear may not just be the wind. The fire crackles, casting flickering shadows across our campsite in Urpo Forest, Colorado. It's just me, 22, and my cousin Cody, 23, out here in the middle of nowhere, chasing solitude. The stars are blinding, the pines whisper in the breeze, until they don't. A sound cuts through the night, sharp and wrong. A low human hum slinks from the pitch-black trees, chilling my blood. Cody's eyes meet mine, wide with alarm. "You hear that?" I whisper. Before he can answer, a twig snaps too close. My heart hammers. We're not alone. Someone is out there, watching, waiting, humming in the dark. This isn't a bear or a wolf. This is worse. This is the night I learned the wilderness hides monsters, and they're human. I fumbled for my phone, killing the classic rock blaring from our speaker. Silence crashed over us, heavy and suffocating. The humming grew louder, paired with the crunch of footsteps on pine needles, circling just beyond the fire's glow. My pulse raced. "Cody, what the hell is that?" I whispered, my voice barely a breath. He didn't answer, his eyes locked on the darkness, jaw tight. "Flashlight," he muttered. I dug through my backpack, hands trembling, but the sounds faded before I could find it. The humming stopped. The footsteps vanished. The quiet was worse, like the forest was holding its breath, waiting to strike. Cody tried to play it cool, his Eagle Scout training kicking in. "Maybe a lost hiker," he said, but his voice cracked. He'd always said the real danger in the woods wasn't bears, it was people. That warning now felt like a prophecy. We were deep in Urpo Forest, miles from help, and someone was out there. We turned the music back on, barely audible, and tried to focus on our Uno game, but the cards shook in my hands. Every rustle, every shadow felt like a threat. The fire's warmth couldn't touch the chill in my bones. Then, a sound like thunder ripped through the camp. A massive branch slammed into the center of our clearing, dirt exploding, cards scattering. I leapt back, heart in my throat. Cody was up, fists balled, roaring into the night. "Whoever's out there, get lost!" His voice echoed, unanswered. Footsteps retreated into the distance, slow and taunting, as if daring us to follow. I grabbed the flashlight, its beam slicing through the trees. Nothing, just endless pines and shadows. But someone had thrown that branch. Someone wanted us, scared. "We need to leave," I said, voice shaking. "Pack up now." Cody shook his head, stubborn as ever. "Moving in the dark's a death wish. We stay, we watch." He handed me a can of bear spray, its weight cold in my hand. "Keep this close." I nodded, but my gut screamed we were wrong to stay. The fire flickered, weak against the swallowing dark. We'd come to Urpo Forest for peace, but peace was gone. We were prey now, and the hunter was out there. Cody's calm was a thin mask. He kept talking, trying to distract us. Stories of old camping trips, dumb jokes, but his eyes never left the trees. I gripped the bear spray, knuckles white, listening for that hum. And then, like a knife to the chest, it returned. Closer, bolder. The humming wove through the pines, a predator's lullaby. "Cody," I hissed, "it's back." His face hardened. He grabbed his bear spray, standing. "Stay here," he said, stepping toward the edge of the firelight. I wanted to scream at him to stop, but fear glued my tongue. The humming grew, circling, mocking until it stopped, replaced by a single deliberate snap of a twig. Too close. Cody froze. We weren't alone. We never had been. Cody insisted on first watch, his book open but his eyes scanning the dark. I crawled into my tent, bear spray clutched tight, praying for sleep. But the wild doesn't let you rest when it's watching. The cold seeped through my sleeping bag. Every sound, a leaf falling, a branch creaking, felt like a warning. I drifted in and out, caught in a fog of fear, until something snapped me awake. My heart pounded, eyes darting. I didn't know what it was. Then I saw it. A shadow. A head loomed at my tent's mesh window, its silhouette black against the fire's dying embers. My breath stopped. "Cody," I whispered, hoping it was him. Silence. The head didn't move. It stared, featureless, unblinking. "Cody, is that you?" I said, louder, voice trembling. Then, like a nightmare unfolding, I heard the tent zipper tear upward, and the head vanished. Ice flooded my veins. I shot upright, ears straining. Footsteps crunched away from the tent, slow, deliberate, melting into the dark. I unzipped my tent, bear spray shaking in my hand, and stumbled into the campsite. The fire was dead, embers cold. Cody's tent was sealed shut. "Cody," I hissed, panic clawing my throat. No answer. I crept to his tent, unzipping it with trembling fingers. There he was, asleep in his sleeping bag, book fallen across his chest. My legs nearly gave out. If Cody was here, then who was at my tent? Who had unzipped it? I shook him awake, words spilling out. "Someone's here, Cody. They were at my tent." He blinked, groggy, but my fear jolted him. "You sure?" he asked, grabbing his bear spray. Before I could answer, it hit us again. That goddamn humming, low and sinister, slithering through the trees. Cody's face drained of color. "That's no hiker," he whispered. "That's someone messing with us." We stood back to back, bear spray ready, flashlights cutting the dark. The humming seemed to pulse, coming from all sides, like the forest was alive with it. "Grab your sleeping bag," Cody said. "You're in my tent tonight." I didn't argue. I ran to my tent, heart hammering, and yanked my bag free. As I did, the humming stopped, replaced by a sharp snap of a branch so close I felt it in my bones. "Hurry!" Cody shouted. I sprinted back, diving into his tent. We zipped it shut, bear spray at our sides, and sat in silence, the night pressing against us. The hours dragged. Cody dozed off, but I couldn't. My eyes were locked on the tent walls, waiting for that shadow to return. Every sound felt like a threat, a rustle, a whisper of wind. Who was out there? A drifter? A psychopath? Or something worse? Something that didn't belong in these woods? The uncertainty was torture. I kept seeing that head, silent, staring like a hunter sizing up its kill. The forest, once our escape, was now a trap, and we were caught. Light finally broke through the trees, a faint promise of safety. We didn't wait for full dawn. We tore down the tents, stuffed gear into backpacks, and moved like our lives depended on it. The forest, now soft in morning light, looked almost innocent, but we knew better. Every shadow felt like a threat, every rustle a reminder of the night we'd endured. We barely spoke. Words couldn't capture the fear still pulsing through us. Hiking back to the car, I kept looking back, half expecting that faceless head to emerge from the pines. Cody, usually unshakable, was silent, his eyes hollow. We could have driven somewhere, else set up camp again, but neither of us wanted it. The wilderness had betrayed us. All we wanted was a locked door, a warm bed, a place where the dark couldn't hum. We reached the car, threw our bags in, and sped away from that picnic area like we were escaping a nightmare. Back home, the terror clung to me. The humming, the branch, that head staring into my tent. It was seared into my mind, a scar I couldn't escape. Cody tried calling a few times, pitching new camping trips, but I couldn't do it. 6 years later, I haven't set foot in the wilderness, and I don't know if I ever will. That night in Urpo Forest changed me. Cody always said the real monsters weren't bears or wolves. They were people. He was right. People who stalk, who watch, who hum in the shadows for reasons we'll never know. What haunts me most isn't just what happened. It's the why. Who was out there? A lone drifter, high and bored, a group of locals playing a cruel game? Or something else? Something that doesn't fit in the world we know? I've dug through forums called Rangers, searched old news for Urpo Forest. Nothing. No reports of stalkers, no missing hikers, no trace. It's like that night was erased, except it lives in me, a weight I carry every day. If you're planning a camping trip, listen close. The wild is stunning, but it's not safe. Not because of bears or cougars, because of us. Out there, where phones don't work and help is miles away, there are people who thrive in the dark. People who don't. Just wander, they hunt. And if you hear a hum in the night, don't wait, don't wonder, run. You're alone in the dead of night, in a cabin so remote the nearest neighbor is miles away. The wind howls outside, but it's not the wind that makes your skin crawl. It's the feeling, that unshakable certainty, that something is watching you. Something that doesn't belong in this world. This is the story of Ethan, a man broken by loss who thought solitude would heal him. Instead, it brought him face to face with a nightmare that still haunts him today. 2 months ago, Ethan's world shattered. His wife, Claire, died in a car accident, one he blames himself for. The guilt was a weight he couldn't carry in the city, surrounded by memories of her laugh, her touch. So he retreated to his family's cabin in the Colorado wilderness, a place he hadn't visited since childhood. It was supposed to be a sanctuary, a place to grieve in silence. The cabin sat deep in a forest so dense the sunlight barely touched the ground. No Wi-Fi, no cell service, just Ethan and his thoughts. Or so he thought. The first night was quiet, almost peaceful. Ethan lit a fire, poured a glass of whiskey, and tried to lose himself in the crackle of the flames. But as the hours passed, the silence grew heavy, oppressive. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the presence of something else. A prickle on the back of his neck, like eyes boring into him from the dark. He dismissed it as grief playing tricks, until he looked out the window. There, among the trees, stood a tall, pale figure, its skin almost glowing in the moonlight, its eyes locked on him. Ethan froze. It wasn't a deer, not a bear. This thing was humanoid, but wrong. Too tall, too thin, its limbs unnaturally long. He blinked and it was gone. His heart pounded, but he told himself it was a shadow, a hallucination born of exhaustion. He locked the door, checked the windows, and tried to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come, because that's when the tapping started. A slow, deliberate tap, 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 on the cabin's window, echoing through the night for hours. Each tap felt like a countdown, a warning that whatever was out there wasn't leaving. Ethan clutched a kitchen knife, his eyes darting to every shadow, every creak. He didn't dare look outside again, not yet. But the tapping wasn't random. It had a rhythm, almost like a code, and it was getting louder. What was out there? Was it human, animal, or something else entirely? Something that knew Ethan was alone, vulnerable, and had nowhere to run? As the night stretched on, Ethan realized this wasn't just a chance encounter. Whatever was watching him had been waiting, and it wasn't done with him yet. The tapping didn't stop. It grew louder, more insistent, like fingernails scraping against glass. Ethan sat in the dark, the knife trembling in his hand, every muscle tensed. He tried to rationalize it. A branch, an animal, anything but what he'd seen. But the rhythm was too precise, too deliberate. Whatever was out there wasn't just testing the window. It was testing him. He forced himself to move, crawling to the fireplace to stoke the flames. The light gave him courage, but it also cast shadows that danced like specters on the walls. He glanced at the window, half expecting to see that pale face pressed against the glass. Nothing, just darkness. But the tapping shifted. Now it was coming from the other side of the cabin, then the door. It was circling him. Ethan's mind raced. He remembered the tall, pale creature in the trees, its eyes like black voids. Had it followed him? Was it toying with him? He grabbed a flashlight and shone it through the window, his heart in his throat. The beam cut through the night, illuminating twisted branches and underbrush. For a moment, he saw nothing. Then, movement. A flicker of white, too fast to track, disappearing behind a tree. His breath caught. It was still out there. He backed away, his mind replaying every horror story he'd ever heard about these woods. Locals called this stretch of forest the Hollow, a place where hikers vanished and hunters swore they saw things that weren't human. Ethan had laughed off those stories as a kid. Now they felt like warnings he should have heeded. He checked his phone, still no signal. The nearest town was a 2-hour drive, and his car keys were on the table, taunting him. Run. Stay. He didn't know which was worse. Then, a new sound. Not tapping. A low, guttural hum, like a chant from deep in the forest. It wasn't animal. It wasn't human. It was wrong. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the cabin's walls, making the air feel thick. Ethan's ears rang, his vision blurred. He stumbled to the door, ready to bolt, but stopped. Footprints. Fresh, elongated prints in the dirt outside, leading from the trees to the cabin. They weren't human. Too narrow, too long, with claw-like marks at the toes. Panic clawed at him. He barricaded the door with a chair, dragged a bookshelf in front of the window. The tapping returned, relentless, now on every window, like the thing was everywhere at once. Ethan screamed into the darkness, "What do you want?" No answer, just the hum, the tapping, and the suffocating certainty that he wasn't alone. He grabbed a journal from the cabin's shelf, desperate for distraction, and found a note in his grandfather's handwriting. "If you see it, don't look. If it taps, don't answer. It wants in." His blood ran cold. His grandfather had known. This wasn't random. This thing, whatever it was, had been here before. Ethan flipped through the journal, pages filled with sketches of a creature that matched what he'd seen. Tall, pale, with limbs like twisted branches. The last entry read, "It comes for the broken. It feeds on grief." Ethan's grief, Claire's death. It wasn't a coincidence. This thing had chosen him. As the hum grew deafening, Ethan made a choice. He couldn't stay trapped like prey. He gripped the knife, took a deep breath, and prepared to face whatever was outside. But as he reached for the door, the tapping stopped. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Was it gone? Or was it waiting for him to make the first move? The silence was worse than the tapping. It pressed against Ethan like a physical force, heavy and suffocating. He stood by the door, knife in hand, every nerve screaming to run. But where? The forest was its domain. The cabin was his only defense, flimsy as it was. He glanced at his grandfather's journal. Its words burned into his mind. It wants in. But why him? Why now? He flipped back to the sketches, his hands shaking. The creature wasn't just a monster, it was a predator drawn to pain. His grandfather's notes described it as a wraith of the hollow, a thing that thrived on human suffering. It didn't kill outright. It stalked. It tormented, feeding on fear until its prey broke. Ethan's grief was a beacon, and he'd walked right into its trap. A creak from the roof snapped him back to reality. Dust fell from the ceiling, the beams groaning under a weight that wasn't the wind. It was above him now. Ethan's breath hitched. He scanned the cabin for anything that could help. His eyes landed on a rusted axe by the fireplace, a relic from his grandfather's days chopping wood. He grabbed it, the weight grounding him. Knife in one hand, axe in the other, he felt a flicker of defiance. If this thing wanted him, it wouldn't get him without a fight. The hum returned, louder, vibrating in his chest. It wasn't just sound, it was a presence, invasive, like it was inside his head. Words formed in the hum, faint but unmistakable. "Let me in." Ethan staggered, clutching his temples. The voice wasn't his imagination, it was real and it was hungry. The tapping erupted again, a frenzy on the windows, the door, the walls, like the creature was everywhere. He screamed, swinging the axe at the air, desperate to make it stop. Then a crash. The window shattered, glass spraying across the floor. A long, pale arm reached through, its claws scraping the wood. Ethan saw it clearly now, the tall, pale creature. Its face a grotesque mask of hollow eyes and a lipless mouth. It didn't rush in. It waited, savoring his terror. Ethan swung the axe, aiming for the arm, but it retracted, impossibly fast. The hum became a laugh, low and guttural, echoing from every corner of the forest. He couldn't stay here. He had to move. Ethan grabbed the journal, stuffed it into his jacket, and bolted for the back door. The car was his only chance. He flung the door open, expecting claws to tear into him. Nothing, just darkness and the distant hum. He sprinted to his truck, fumbling with the keys. The engine roared to life, headlights cutting through the night. For a moment, he thought he'd made it. Then he saw it. Standing in the road, illuminated by the beams, its pale skin gleamed, its eyes locked on him. It didn't move. It didn't need to. The hum filled the air, louder than the engine, drowning out his thoughts. Ethan floored the gas, aiming straight for it. The creature sidestepped, fluid as smoke, and the truck swerved, scraping a tree. He corrected, heart pounding, and kept driving. The hum faded, but he didn't slow down. Miles later, he reached a gas station, the first sign of civilization. He collapsed against the counter, babbling about the creature. The clerk, an old man with tired eyes, listened quietly. "You're not the first," he said. "The hollow takes what it wants." He handed Ethan a worn map, marked with a path, to avoid the forest. Don't go back. Ethan never did. But the journal stayed with him, a reminder of what he'd survived. And sometimes, in the dead of night, he swears he hears it. A faint tap, tap, tap on his window. Ethan never returned to the cabin. He couldn't. The memory of that night clung to him like a shadow, surfacing in nightmares that left him gasping. He moved to a small apartment in Denver, far from the wilderness, but the city's noise couldn't drown out the echo of that hum. The journal became his obsession. He read it cover to cover, piecing together his grandfather's warnings. The wraith wasn't just a monster. It was a force, ancient and patient, drawn to those who carried the heaviest burdens. Ethan's grief had been its invitation. He started researching the hollow, digging into old records, newspaper clippings, anything that might explain what he'd seen. He found stories, whispers really, of others who'd encountered it. A hiker in 1987 found wandering the highway, muttering about eyes in the trees. A hunter in 2003 whose journal described a pale thing that followed him for days. Most didn't survive. Those who did never spoke of it again. Ethan realized he was lucky, or maybe the wraith had let him go, too weak to fight its pull. He didn't know why. Maybe it wasn't done with him yet. He tracked down the gas station clerk, hoping for answers. The old man was still there, his eyes sharper than Ethan remembered. "You're still alive," he said, almost surprised. "That's more than most. Get." He told Ethan the hollow had always been cursed, a place where the veil between worlds was thin. The wraith wasn't the only thing out there, he warned. There were others, things older, hungrier. "Stay away from pain," he said. "It's what they smell." Ethan took the advice to heart. He started therapy, not to forget, but to heal. He joined a grief support group, sharing what he could without sounding insane. He didn't mention the wraith, but he talked about Claire, about the guilt that nearly destroyed him. Slowly the weight lifted. He wasn't whole, but he was alive, and that was enough. One night, a year later, he woke to a sound. A faint tap, tap, tap. His heart stopped. He lay still listening, but it was just a branch against the window. Or so he told himself. He got up, checked the locks, and went back to bed. But he kept the axe by his bedside just in case. The journal stayed with him, a talisman and a warning. He added his own entry, a message for whoever might find it next. If you're grieving, if you're broken, stay away from the hollow. It's not just a forest, it's a hunter, and it's always watching. Ethan's story isn't just a tale of terror. It's a reminder that our pain can be a beacon, drawing things we can't imagine. But it's also proof that we can survive. Ethan faced the unimaginable and walked away, not unscathed, but stronger. He learned that grief isn't a weakness, it's a battle, and he's still fighting. If you ever find yourself in a place like the hollow, listen closely. Trust your instincts. And if you hear a tap, tap, tap in the night, don't answer, because some doors once opened can't be closed. It's 10 p.m., and Jake's alone in a diner staring at a text that stops his heart. "I'm outside, watching you." His eyes dart to the parking lot where a shadowy figure stands, motionless, under a flickering streetlight. This isn't a bad dream, it's real. A man tries to buy an iPhone off Facebook Marketplace and narrowly escapes a trap. What started as a hunt for a deal has spiraled into a nightmare. Someone's been tracking his every move, and now he's trapped. In a game he didn't sign up for. How did it come to this? Stay with us, because this true story will make you rethink every click you make online. You'll never trust a deal the same way again. Jake's a 28-year-old graphic designer from Denver, with a knack for sniffing out bargains. Facebook Marketplace is his playground. He's scored a vintage leather jacket for $20, a coffee maker for $15, even a set of studio lights for half price. So when he spots an iPhone 13 Pro, barely used, listed for $300, he's all in. He tries to buy an iPhone off Facebook Marketplace. The seller, Mike, has a sparse profile, a blurry photo, a few posts about car parts, and 2 5-star reviews. Jake messages him, and Mike's quick to reply. "Phone's mint, man. Meet me tomorrow." At 7 p.m., Jake's thrilled, but there's a nagging feeling he can't shake. Mike's texts are short, almost pushy, and he insists on meeting at a gas station on the edge of town, a run-down spot far from Denver's bustle. "It's closer for me," Mike writes. Jake hesitates. The location feels off, but the deal's too good to pass up. A man tries to buy an iPhone off Facebook Marketplace, and Jake's not about to let a little doubt stop him. He agrees, stuffing $300 cash into his wallet. That night, he tells his roommate, Sarah, about the plan. "Be careful," she says, half joking. "You don't want to end up on a true crime podcast." Jake laughs, but as he drives to the gas station, the empty lot and dim lights churn his gut. Jake pulls in, headlights slicing through the dusk. No mic. He texts, "I'm here. Where you at?" No response. 5 minutes drag by, then 10. Jake's patience frays, his fingers tapping the wheel. Just as he's about to leave, a rusty sedan creeps into the lot, tires crunching gravel. A tall, wiry guy steps out, hoodie pulled low. "You Jake?" he asks, voice flat. Jake nods, flashing. "The cash." The guy pulls out the iPhone. It looks legit, no scratches. But when Jake asks to test it, the guy stalls. "Battery's dead," he mutters. "Charger's at home." Jake narrowly escapes a trap involving a fake seller, but he doesn't know it yet. His instincts scream to bail, but the cash feels heavy. The deal too close. He hands over the $300, grabs the phone, and bolts to his car, heart pounding. As he pulls out, he catches the sedan in his rear view, tailing him. Not close, but close enough. Every turn he makes, it's there, a shadow in the night. A man tries to buy an iPhone off Facebook Marketplace and narrowly escapes a trap. Jake's no paranoid type, but this feels wrong. He heads to a diner a few miles away. Open 24/7, a safe haven with lights and people. Jake pulls into the diner's lot. The neon "Open 24/7" sign buzzing overhead. He tries the iPhone. Nothing. It's a brick, a $300 scam. He texts Sarah. "Got scammed, phone's a dud." Her reply is instant. "Get out of there, Jake." But Jake's stubborn, not ready to admit he's been played. He heads inside, sliding into a booth by the window, ordering a coffee he won't touch. The diner's quiet. A waitress wipes counters, a trucker eats eggs, a jukebox hums faintly. Jake scans the lot. The sedan's gone. Maybe he overreacted. Then his phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. "You shouldn't be here." Jake's breath catches. He checks the diner. The waitress is chatting with the cook, the trucker's still eating. No one's watching him. But outside, the fake seller who stalks him to a diner is out there pulling strings. Jake's mind races. How do they have his number? Did they follow him? He remembers the guy's smirk, the dead phone, the sedan trailing him. A man tries to buy an iPhone off Facebook Marketplace and narrowly escapes a trap involving a fake seller who stalks him to a diner. This wasn't a quick scam. It was planned, every step designed to lure him here. Jake calls Sarah, voice low. "I'm in trouble. Someone's watching me." Sarah's calm but firm. "Stay there. I'm calling." The cops. Jake's eyes flick to every car in the lot. Then he sees it. The sedan parked across the street, lights off. The driver's silhouette is faint, but Jake feels their gaze, cold and predatory. His phone buzzes again. "Look outside." His hands shake as he reads it. Another text follows. "You can't hide." The fake seller who stalks him to a diner is closing in, and Jake's running out of time. Jake's heart pounds, the diner's walls closing in. He flags the waitress. "Is there a back exit?" She points to the kitchen, but before he can move, another text. "Check your car." Jake knows it's a lure, but he can't sit here trapped. He tells the waitress he's stepping out but will be back. She nods, unaware of the danger. Jake slips outside, sticking to the shadows, his phone's flashlight barely piercing the dark. He kneels by his car. There it is, a jagged slash in his front tire, air hissing out. Someone, possibly the fake seller, slashes his tire. Jake's stomach drops. This isn't a scam. It's a hunt. A man tries to buy an iPhone off Facebook. Marketplace and narrowly escapes a trap involving a fake seller who stalks him to a diner and possibly slashes his tire. Jake spins around, scanning the lot. The sedan's across the street, engine humming. Headlights flicking on for a split second. Jake sprints back to the diner, slamming the door. The waitress jumps. "You okay?" Jake's too shaken to answer. He dials 911. "Someone's after me. They slashed my tire. I'm at the diner on Route 17. The operator's calm, but Jake's world is unraveling. Then he hears it. A tap on the window. Slow, deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. Jake freezes, blood turning to ice. The figure's outside, hoodie low, holding something that glints in the neon light. A knife? Jake's body screams danger. The waitress gasps, grabbing her phone. "I'm calling the owner." But Jake knows help won't come fast enough. The fake seller who stalks him to a diner and possibly slashes his tire is here, and Jake's out of moves. Police lights flood the lot just as the figure vanishes. Jake's shaking as he explains. The scam, the texts, the slashed tire. The cops find the sedan abandoned a block away, stolen, no prints. Jake narrowly escapes a trap. He's left with a dead phone, a $500 tow bill, and a fear that lingers. At home, he deletes his Marketplace account. Sarah hugs him. "You're lucky." Jake knows it. A man tries to buy an iPhone off Facebook Marketplace and narrowly escapes. A trap. Weeks later, he jumps at every text, wondering if Mike is still out there. This isn't just a story, it's a warning. Online deals are tempting, but some predators hunt for more than your money. Ryan Carter's phone buzzed at 3:17 a.m. The screen's glow slicing through his darkened apartment. A text from an unknown number read, "The reunion is your last chance, Ryan. Be there, or we'll find you." His heart slammed against his ribs. 5 days earlier, a gold-embossed invitation for his 10-year high school reunion had arrived at his new, unlisted address. The RSVP link was dead, the sender a vague Class of 2014 committee. Ryan, a 28-year-old graphic designer, had buried high school, a gauntlet of isolation, whispered taunts, and a mystery that clung like damp rot. Mr. Hargrove, his history teacher, had vanished senior year after digging into the school's alumni records. Ryan had overheard him in the faculty lounge muttering about secrets buried in the files and a cycle that never stops. Hargrove's car was found abandoned, his office cleared out overnight. The memory was a splinter in Ryan's mind, sharp and unyielding. He'd nearly shredded the invite, but the text threat hooked him. He decided to attend the high school reunion, bringing his friend Emily as his date, hoping nostalgia would drown the dread. Emily, a 29-year-old journalist with a razor-sharp nose for deception, scoffed as they drove through fog to Redwood Manor, a crumbling estate on the town's outskirts. "This is giving me con artist vibes," she said, flipping the invite over. "Who throws a reunion in a place that looks like it's cursed?" She'd always been Ryan's anchor, the one who saw through lies when he couldn't. The manor's iron gates groaned open under a starless sky, revealing a ballroom awash in golden light. Strangers in tailored suits and glittering gowns mingled, their voices carrying names Ryan vaguely recalled, classmates from a decade ago. But something was wrong. These people weren't his classmates. They were decades older, their faces etched with wrinkles, yet they smiled and claimed to be his peers. Ryan's stomach churned. A woman in a velvet gown approached, her eyes glinting like glass. "Ryan Carter, our resident artist," she purred, reciting his junior year sketchbook, a prank he'd kept secret. Emily's grip tightened. "This is all kinds of wrong," she whispered, her voice nearly lost in the quartet's haunting melody. Another guest, a man with a crooked smile, leaned in, his breath sour. "We've missed you, Ryan," he said, knowing his childhood dog's name. The chandeliers flickered, casting jagged shadows. The air grew heavy, the exits too far. They hadn't walked into a reunion. They'd stumbled into a trap, and the truth was creeping closer, sharp and unforgiving. The ballroom pulsed with an eerie rhythm, the quartet's melody slithering like a living thing. Ryan and Emily wove through strangers, their eyes scanning faces that didn't belong. A woman with silver hair, Lisa, claimed they'd bonded over history projects. Ryan remembered Lisa, bubbly with braces, not this woman who looked 60. Their stories didn't add up, their ages impossibly off. A man, Mike, laughed about a football game Ryan never attended, his teeth too white. Emily whispered, "They're watching us." A woman in a sequined gown stared, her 1984 class ring glinting, not 2014. Yearbooks on the walls showed 70s and 80s classes, faces matching the guests. This wasn't a reunion. It was a lie, filled with people pretending to be his classmates. A man in a tweed jacket approached, sweat beading on his brow. "You don't belong here," he muttered, slipping Ryan a note. "They're watching me too. Get to the archives." His eyes darted and he vanished. Ryan unfolded the note. Basement, archives, truth. Another guest, a man with hollow cheeks, stared at Ryan, his gaze heavy with recognition. "You look scared," he said softly, as if savoring it. Ryan's skin crawled. He pulled Emily to a hallway of portraits, their eyes seeming to follow. The air grew colder, the music a distant hum. A locked door read Alumni Archives. Ryan jimmied the lock, the metal scraping loudly. The door creaked open, revealing a dim room packed with yearbooks, files, and photos. Ryan at his office, Emily at her gym, taken weeks ago. The archive's walls seemed to close in, shadows shifting in the flickering light. Emily's voice cracked. "They've been stalking us." Ryan found a file labeled Class of 2014, filled with dossiers on every classmate detailing Ryan's routines, fears, and past. A single word was scrawled across his: target. They weren't guests. They were prey. The archive room was a crypt, its air thick with dread. Ryan flipped through a yearbook, his breath catching. His class, but his photo was aged, wrinkled. These people weren't his classmates. They were imposters, old enough to be his parents. Emily found a corkboard with their names marked Phase 1 Observe. Ryan's was circled. Primary target. A 1984 letter described a pact to preserve the class through renewal. Emily opened another file, revealing missing students' names, some crossed out, dating back to the 70s. "They're all gone," she whispered. Footsteps echoed. "They're coming," Emily hissed. The velvet gown woman's voice slithered through the door. "Ryan, you can't hide." Two men burst in, one with a knife, his face from a 1984 yearbook. "He's seen too much," one said. Ryan spotted a vent. They crawled through, hearing, "His blood completes the pact." A hand grabbed Ryan's ankle. He kicked free, the vent shaking. The passage led to a basement of moldy furniture and decay. A notebook read, "Ritual of Renewal and Blood of the Young." The reunion was a facade for something sinister. They found a stairwell, but the knife-wielding man blocked it. "You're ours," he said, lunging. Ryan swung a pipe, knocking him down. They burst into the night, the manor's lights pulsing. Emily grabbed Ryan's arm. "What do they want?" The notebook's words burned. Blood of the young. They weren't safe. Ryan and Emily tore through the gardens, thorns ripping their skin. The manor's windows glowed like eyes. Their car was sabotaged, wires cut. An SUV's headlights closed in. The reunion was a sham, a cover for imposters with a hidden agenda. They fled into the woods, Ryan recalling Hargrove's disappearance. The SUV's lights swept through, a voice calling, "Ryan, we just want to talk." A knife glinted. They reached a gas station, calling 911. Police found the manor empty. No files, no guests. Ryan's invitation was blank, but for eternal. Weeks later, a 2014 class photo arrived, showing the manor's strangers. Who were these people and what did they want? Ryan found a symbol in the photo, a circle with 3 lines scratched into his door, his phone's wallpaper. News clippings linked missing alumni to Redwood Manor reunions. A call whispered, "You can't escape." The truth hid in the shadows, and Ryan would find it. It's 3 a.m. in a quiet Ohio suburb, 2024, and a house lies dark, eerily silent. An 8-year-old boy wakes up alone in his bed, his heart pounding in the stillness. His parents are gone. They rushed out after a desperate call about a family emergency, forgetting to lock the front door in their haste. The boy whispers, "Mom," but gets no reply. Then a sound, soft footsteps creeping across the living room floor. A shadow moves in the hallway, tall and unfamiliar. Someone's in the house. This isn't a nightmare, it's real and danger is closing in. Who's out there? What do they want? How does a kid survive when terror's already inside? Stay with me. This true story will haunt you till the end. The 8-year-old boy lay frozen in his bed, clutching his blanket as his small body trembled. He was alone in the house, the silence so heavy, it felt like a living thing. His parents had rushed out for an emergency, not realizing they'd left the front door unlocked. And now something was terribly wrong. The footsteps he'd heard were real, deliberate, moving closer. A stranger was in the house, their presence like a dark shadow seeping through the walls. The boy's superhero nightlight flickered, casting jagged shapes that turned his room into a maze of fear. He whispered, "Dad?" His voice barely a breath, but only silence answered. Then a new sound, a low, guttural hum, perhaps a voice drifting from the living room. It wasn't his family. The boy's heart pounded as he realized he was in danger. He slid out of bed, his bare feet cold against the hardwood. Each step a risk. He had to act, hide, run, anything to survive the stranger's presence. His bedroom door was cracked open, just enough to peek into the hallway. Every creak of the floor was deafening in the dark. Through the gap, he saw a figure, tall, thin, rifling through a drawer in the living room. Their movements were slow, too calm, like they owned the place. Moonlight glinted off something in their hand. A knife? The boy's breath caught. This wasn't a thief looking for cash. This felt like something far worse, something targeted. The stranger paused, head tilting as if they felt his gaze. The boy was terrified, his mind racing with fear of what the stranger might do. Should he stay hidden? Find help? His parents' mistake had let this danger in, and now he was alone to face it. The stranger turned, their boots thudding toward the hallway, toward his room. Each step made the floor groan, each sound tightening the knot in his stomach. The danger was real, and it was closing in. He scrambled under his bed, squeezing between forgotten toys and dust, the air thick and suffocating. He could hear the stranger's breathing now, ragged and uneven, just outside his door. The knob turned slow and deliberate. The boy bit his lip, fighting a whimper. The door creaked open, and a pair of boots stepped inside, stopping inches from the bed. He held his breath, praying they wouldn't look down. But then the stranger knelt, their face inches from the floor, eyes cold and unblinking, scanning the darkness. They knew he was there. The 8-year-old boy's heart stopped as the stranger's eyes locked onto his, time freezing in that terrifying moment. He was a child facing a danger he couldn't understand, his voice trapped in his throat. The stranger's face was gaunt, eyes hollow, like they hadn't slept in days. "I know you're there," they whispered, voice low and raspy. The boy felt the weight of the threat, his small body shaking under the bed. This wasn't a random break-in. They were looking for him. Why? He was just a kid. The stranger reached under the bed, fingers grazing his arm. The boy reacted out of pure fear, jerking back and kicking a toy truck that clattered across the floor. The noise was deafening. The stranger hissed, lunging forward, but the boy rolled out the other side, bolting for the door. He ran, driven by the terror of the stranger in his home, his small legs burning as he sprinted down the hallway. The living room was a maze of shadows, furniture looming like monsters. He needed a phone, a weapon, anything to survive. The stranger's footsteps thundered behind, closer every second. His parents had left him alone, the unlocked door letting this nightmare in, and now he was fighting for his life. He had to find a way to call for help. A cordless phone sat on the coffee table, just out of reach. If he could dial 911, he might make it. But the stranger was in the room now, their silhouette filling the doorway, moving slow, like a predator savoring the hunt. The boy's eyes caught a photo on the wall. Him, his parents, his grandma, taken last Christmas. Then it hit him. The stranger's voice, when it was familiar, from the hospital. A nurse who'd cared for his grandma, always asking odd questions about their family, their house. Was it her? A chill ran through him. This wasn't about stealing, it was revenge. His parents had filed a complaint against her for negligence, and now she was here, targeting him. The danger was personal, and the boy was the target. The realization was a gut punch, but it fueled his resolve. He couldn't let her win. He had to fight, not just for himself, but for his family. The 8-year-old boy, still reeling from the danger, grabbed the phone, his small hands shaking as he dialed 911. The stranger, the nurse, stepped closer, her boots scraping the floor. "You can't hide forever," she said, her voice dripping with venom. He was a child fighting to survive a stranger's threat, his every move driven by fear. He pressed the call button, praying it would connect. A faint ring sounded, but the nurse lunged, knocking the phone away. It skidded across the floor, the operator's voice faint. 911, what's your emergency? The boy reacted, screaming for help, a raw sound that tore through the house. The nurse froze, startled, and in that split second, he took his chance. To escape the danger, he ran, desperate to get away from the stranger, darting to the kitchen, the only room with a lockable door. His sock slipped on the tile, but he slammed the door, turning the lock. The nurse pounded, the wood shaking. "Open it!" she snarled. His parents' mistake, the unlocked front door, had let this monster in, but he wasn't done fighting. He backed away, scanning for anything to defend himself. A knife block sat on the counter, but his hands were too small. Then he saw the back door, unlocked, just like the front. That mistake was now his lifeline. The boy kept running, desperate to escape the stranger, flinging the door open and sprinting into the night, the cold air biting his skin. The neighbor's porch light glowed, a beacon. He pounded on their door, screaming for help. Lights flicked on and a retired cop yanked it open. "Kid, what's wrong?" Sirens wailed. The 911 call had worked. The nurse was still inside, but the police were coming. The boy had survived the terrifying ordeal, collapsing in sobs as the neighbor wrapped him in a blanket. The fear would linger, etched into his memory. The tea. Police arrested the nurse who'd been fired after the boy's parents' complaint. She'd spiraled into obsession, targeting their family. The parents returned at dawn, guilt-ridden, horrified by their mistake. Their unlocked door had nearly cost their son's life. The 8-year-old had faced a monster and come out stronger, but every creak, every shadow would remind him of that night. Lock your doors, check them twice. One small mistake can let evil walk right in. The old house groans under the weight of silence, its shadows pooling in corners like spilled ink. I'm alone, a first-time caregiver for a 65-year-old woman lost to dementia. Her name's Martha, and it's my job to keep her safe through the night. But as the clock nears midnight, the air turns heavy, oppressive. Then it shatters. A scream rips through the dark. "Who are you?" Martha's voice, raw and unhinged, echoes from somewhere upstairs. My blood freezes. This isn't the frail woman I met hours ago. This is something else, something dangerous lurking in the shell of her mind. I'm trained to calm, to care, but nothing prepares you for the moment a patient becomes a threat. This night, I'll learn dementia doesn't just steal memories, it awakens nightmares. I was a direct care aide for a 65-year-old woman with a developmental disability. My name's Emily, 29, with 9 years of experience. I'd seen it all: confused patients, angry outbursts, moments that test your nerve. But nothing prepared me for Martha. Her daughter, Colleen, who worked overnights, hired me to watch her mother. Colleen warned me that Martha would sometimes walk around the house at night, acting confused, and I'd need to calm her down and bring her back to her room. She specifically said it wasn't sleepwalking, but a symptom of her mother's dementia. I nodded, thinking I'd handled worse. I'd already worked for 2 other women with developmental disabilities, so I felt ready. I was wrong. The night began around 9 p.m. Colleen introduced me to Martha, who gave me a smile before being led upstairs to bed. I settled in the living room, the TV humming softly, my phone glowing with a half-watched show. The house was old, its floorboards groaning under invisible weight. At first, the sounds were comforting, a reminder of life in the stillness. But around 10 p.m., I heard something else. I heard footsteps from upstairs. I froze, my thumb hovering over the pause button. "Martha," I called, climbing the stairs. The footsteps went back to her room, and the door closed. I exhaled, assuming she'd gone to the bathroom, but a knot tightened in my stomach. By 11:30, hunger gnawed at me. I got up to grab my sandwich from the fridge. As I left the kitchen with my plate, I nearly had a heart attack and dropped the plate when I saw Martha standing at the doorway. Glass shattered everywhere. I apologized to her and asked if she was okay. My voice shook. She started yelling at me. "Who are you?" I reminded her who I am, her direct care worker, here to make sure she's okay. Everything she said was, in a loud scream, "Why are you here? I don't know you." Her words were a blade slicing through my calm. I reminded her that we had just met, and that her mother Colleen hired me. This seemed to work long enough for me to get her to come back upstairs with me into her room. I brought her a glass of water and some melatonin, and made sure she took both. "Good night, Martha," I said, closing the door. Back downstairs, I swept up the broken plate, my hands trembling. That scream wasn't just confusion, it was rage, fear, something primal. The house felt alive, its shadows shifting in ways they shouldn't. I tried to focus on my show, but every creak sent my eyes to the staircase. Colleen had specifically addressed that Martha's nighttime behavior was a symptom of her dementia. But what did that mean? Was she a danger? I pushed the thought away, but it clung, heavy and cold. I was absolutely exhausted. I had to get a couple hours of shut-eye. There was a spare bedroom upstairs with a twin-sized bed where Colleen said I could rest if needed. I took the chance, collapsing onto the mattress, the house's groans fading as sleep pulled me under. But it didn't last. I woke up to a sound. From downstairs, a repeated slamming. everyone to 2 seconds. My eyes snapped open, heart pounding. The room was still pitch black, and the 1-hour alarm I set had not yet gone off. The slamming grew louder, relentless, like a machine gone mad. I jumped out of bed, realizing the slamming was coming from the kitchen. I moved down the stairs, flashlight in hand, its beam trembling. At the bottom, I peered into the kitchen, and my blood turned to ice. Martha stood in the darkness, repeatedly opening and slamming the oven door shut. The sound was deafening, a mechanical pulse of chaos. I really only saw her silhouette. It was that dark in the kitchen. I said, "Martha," really loudly, and she stopped, turned to her left at me. The oven door slammed shut one final time, and she stepped forward, her facial features now visible, looking at me with a blank expression. She walked right past me and started walking up the stairs. I followed her upstairs, but as soon as she got to her room, she slammed her door shut. I knocked, voice shaking. "Martha, are you all right?" No response. I quietly opened the door just to peek inside and saw Martha at the side of her bed, just standing, facing the wall. My stomach churned. I walked over to her and gently eased her into the bed. When she was lying down, I covered her and said, "Good night, Martha," and shut her door. I stood there, trembling, the kitchen's cold still clinging to me. That wasn't Martha. It was something else, something wearing her skin. I went across the upstairs to the spare room and went back to bed. Sleep was impossible, but I tried. Flashlight on, every creak a threat. Around 3 a.m., a new sound stopped my breath, a faint creak like a hinge. I noticed the cracked open closet door and the black shadow of a head peeking out of the closet. I said, "Martha," but she didn't answer. I kept saying, "Martha," until she pushed the door open and approached the bed slowly. She started, saying, "Who are you? I don't know you," as she got closer. I reached for the lamp next to the bed and fumbled until it turned on. Martha was holding a huge kitchen knife in her hand. My heart stopped. I screamed, "Martha, put the knife down." She got closer and started screaming back at me, still repeating, "I don't know you." I mapped out a way to run around her in the bedroom and went for it. I jumped off the bed on the side, further from her, and she screamed again, "Who are you?" She swung the knife at the air as I ran past her. It was a slow and weak swipe. I bolted downstairs, grabbing my shoes, and stumbled outside, the night air a shock. I called Colleen, as she requested I do if there's an issue. "Your mom tried to kill me," I yelled. Colleen was yelling into the phone at me not to leave her. I snapped back, "She had a knife." I stayed outside, making sure Martha didn't go anywhere until Colleen returned. When Colleen went inside, Martha was back in her bed, asleep. Colleen went as far as accusing me of exaggerating the whole thing, until she found the knife next to Martha's bed. I left out the fact that I ever went to sleep to avoid blame, but I was done. I grabbed my bag and left. I never worked in that house again. Martha was a scarier patient than I'd ever dealt with in my 9 years of being a direct care aide. Driving home, the night replayed like a horror film stuck on loop. Martha's scream, "Who are you?" rang in my ears. Her blank eyes seared into my mind. The oven door slamming, her shadow in the closet, that knife. They weren't just dementia. They were something darker, something that thrived in the chaos of her mind. I'd always thought dementia made people fragile, lost. But that night I saw it could turn them into something else, something unpredictable, almost monstrous. What haunts me most is the unknown. Was Martha truly lost in her illness, or was there intent behind that knife? Did she recognize me even for a moment and still want to harm me? I've worked with dementia patients since, but none like her. I called Colleen a week later, desperate for answers. She was evasive, saying Martha was better now, but her voice trembled. I scoured online forums, medical journals, anything for cases like this. Dementia patients turning violent, wielding knives. There were stories, but none captured the raw terror of that night. It's like Martha's house was a void, a nightmare. I'd barely escaped. Caregiving is a calling, but it's not without risk. That night taught me something no training could. Dementia doesn't just steal memories. It can rewrite a person, turn them into a stranger who sees you as the enemy. If you're a caregiver, or considering it, listen close. The job is noble, but it's not safe. Not when you're alone, in the dark, with a patient who's no longer themselves. And if you hear a scream, or see a shadow where it shouldn't be, don't hesitate. Get out. Because sometimes the person you're caring for isn't the one staring back. The key turns in the lock and you step into your new apartment expecting a fresh start. But something's off. A faint smell of cologne lingers, one you don't recognize. Your roommate's shoes are by the door, but he's not supposed to. Be home. Your heart skips a beat and a whisper in your gut says you're not alone. This is the story of Sarah, a woman who moved in with a stranger and found herself living with a nightmare. Sarah was 28, a graphic designer chasing a new job in Seattle. The city's rent was brutal, so she hunted for a roommate online. That's when she met Ryan. He was a man in his 30s, charming and polite, offering a spare room in his cozy 2-bedroom apartment. His ad promised a clean space, quiet neighborhood, cheap rent. They met for coffee and he seemed normal, maybe a little reserved, but nothing alarming. Sarah signed the lease, hopeful for a stable home. The first week was fine. Ryan worked odd hours as a coder, keeping to himself. Sarah settled into her new room, unpacking her life into a space that felt like hers. But then small things started to unravel. Her coffee mug, left on the counter, was washed and in the sink when she hadn't touched it. Her bedroom door, always closed, was sometimes ajar when she got home. She brushed it off as forgetfulness, but the unease crept in. One night she caught Ryan standing in the hallway, staring at her door. He smiled, mumbled about the thermostat, and walked away. Her instincts screamed, "Something's wrong." Then the notes started. Slips of paper under her door in Ryan's handwriting. "You look nice today. Sleep well." Sarah confronted him and he laughed it off, saying he was just being friendly. But the notes grew bolder, more intimate. "I like how you hum when you cook. Your shampoo smells nice." Sarah's skin crawled. She locked her door at night, checked the deadbolt twice. She told herself she was paranoid. Ryan hadn't done anything. Not yet. But Sarah wasn't imagining things. Ryan wasn't just quirky or awkward. He was watching her, studying her, and she was starting to realize he wasn't the man he'd pretended to be. The apartment was no longer a home. It was a cage, and Sarah was about to discover just how dangerous her roommate really was. Sarah started keeping a journal, jotting down every odd moment to convince herself she wasn't paranoid. The notes from Ryan were piling up, now appearing in places they shouldn't. Inside her purse taped to her laptop. She installed a small lock on her bedroom door, but it didn't help her sleep. Every night, she lay awake, listening for footsteps. In the hall, the apartment, once a haven, was now a maze of shadows and suspicion. Ryan's behavior grew bolder. He'd linger in the kitchen when Sarah cooked, asking personal questions about her job, her friends, her ex. His eyes followed her, unblinking, like he was memorizing her every move. She noticed things missing, a hairpin, a scarf, even a photo of her with her sister. When she asked Ryan, he shrugged, saying she must have misplaced them. But his smile was too sharp, too knowing. Sarah started carrying her keys and phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. She didn't feel safe anymore. One evening, she came home late from work and found the apartment dark. Ryan was supposed to be out, but his shoes were by the door. Her heart raced as she flicked on the light. The living room was empty, but her journal, kept hidden under her mattress, was open on the coffee table. Pages were torn out, replaced with a new note. "You don't need to write about me, I'm right here." Sarah's knees buckled. Ryan was a stalker, and he wasn't hiding it anymore. She called a friend, Mia, whispering from her locked bedroom. Mia urged her to leave, but Sarah hesitated. Her lease tied her to the apartment for 6 more months. Plus, Ryan hadn't hurt her. Not physically. She didn't want to overreact. But Mia insisted. "He's escalating, Sarah. Get out." Sarah promised to call the police if things got worse. She didn't know worse was already here. The next morning, Ryan acted like nothing had happened. He made coffee, offered her a cup, and chatted about the weather. His normalcy was unnerving, a mask that didn't quite fit. Sarah avoided him, spending more time at work or with Mia, but she couldn't avoid the apartment forever. One night, she woke to a sound, a faint click like a door being tested. She checked her lock. It held, but the air felt wrong, heavy with the weight of being watched. She texted Mia. "I think he's in my room at night." Mia came over the next day, helping Sarah search the apartment. They found nothing. No cameras, no bugs. But Mia noticed a faint scratch on the inside of Sarah's bedroom door, like someone had tried to pick the lock. Sarah's fear solidified. Ryan wasn't just watching her. He was trying to get closer. She bought a cheap security camera and set it up in her room. If Ryan was crossing lines, she'd have proof. That night, the camera caught something. Not Ryan's face, but a shadow moving across her room, pausing by her bed. The footage was grainy, but the shape was unmistakable. Tall, lean, deliberate. Sarah watched the clip, her stomach churning. He'd been in her room, standing over her, while she slept. She didn't confront him. She called Mia, packed a bag, and planned to stay at a hotel. But Ryan was home, and leaving without him noticing would be a challenge. Sarah's plan was simple: grab her essentials and leave while Ryan was out. She waited until his car pulled away, her hands shaking as she stuffed clothes into a duffel bag. The camera's footage played in her mind, Ryan's shadow looming over her bed. She couldn't stay another night, but as she zipped her bag, she heard it, the front door creaking open. Ryan was back. Her pulse pounded. She hid the bag under her bed and slipped into the bathroom, locking the door. Footsteps echoed in the apartment, slow and deliberate. Ryan called her name, his voice soft but chilling, like he knew she was there. Sarah held her breath, clutching her phone. She texted Mia, "He's here. Help." Mia replied instantly, "Call 911 now." Sarah hesitated. What could she say? That her roommate was creepy? That she felt unsafe? It wasn't enough. Not yet. The footsteps stopped outside the bathroom. A long pause, then a knock. "Sarah, you okay?" Ryan's voice was calm, almost concerned. She didn't answer. The knob rattled just once, then silence. She waited, counting seconds until she heard him walk away. She cracked the door open, peering into the dark hallway. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. She grabbed her bag and crept toward the front door, every step a gamble. But Ryan wasn't in the living room. He wasn't in the kitchen. Sarah's relief was short-lived. As she reached for the door, a floorboard creaked behind her. She spun around, and there he was, standing at the end of the hall, his eyes glinting in the dim light. He smiled, the same smile he'd used to charm her months ago. but now it was a predator's grin. "Leaving so soon?" he asked, stepping closer. Sarah bolted, but he was faster, blocking the door. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. Sarah backed away, her mind racing. She remembered the camera, the journal, the notes. Proof. She needed to stall. "I know what you've been doing," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "The notes, the camera. I have it all." Ryan's smile faltered, just for a second. Then he laughed, a sound that sent chills down her spine. "You're smarter than I thought," he said. "But you're not leaving." She ran for her bedroom, slamming the door and shoving a chair under the knob. Her phone was in her hand, dialing 911. As she whispered to the operator, she heard it. A soft thud from inside her room. Her blood ran cold. She turned, and there he was. Ryan, sitting on her bed in the dark, his silhouette barely visible. His eyes locked on hers, unblinking like he'd been waiting for her. "You shouldn't have locked me out," he whispered. Sarah screamed, the phone slipping from her hand. Ryan lunged, but she dodged, grabbing a lamp and swinging it at him. It connected and he staggered, giving her a split second to yank the door open. She ran, stumbling into the living room, as the operator's voice crackled through the phone. "Police are on their way." Sarah reached the front door just as sirens wailed in the distance. Ryan was behind her, his footsteps heavy, but the flashing lights outside stopped him cold. He froze, his face twisting with rage, as Sarah flung the door open and ran into the arms of the police. The police took Ryan away in handcuffs, his eyes still fixed on Sarah as they led him to the cruiser. She stood on the sidewalk, wrapped in a blanket, trembling as the adrenaline faded. The officers searched the apartment, finding her journal, the notes, and the camera footage, proof that Ryan had been stalking her for months. They found a hidden box under his bed filled with photos of Sarah, taken at work at the grocery store, even through her bedroom window. There were locks of her hair, her missing scarf, and a notebook detailing her every move. Ryan hadn't just been watching, he'd been planning. Sarah couldn't go back to the apartment. She stayed with Mia, sleeping on her couch, jumping at every sound. The police kept her updated. Ryan had a history, restraining orders from 2 other women, dropped charges for lack of evidence. This time they had enough. He was charged with stalking, breaking and entering, and attempted assault. Sarah's footage was the key, a digital lifeline that saved her. Every shadow felt like him, every creak a reminder of that night. She started therapy to rebuild her sense of safety. Her therapist helped her see that Ryan had exploited her trust. Sarah blamed herself at first. Why hadn't she seen the signs? But she learned that predators like Ryan thrive on doubt. She wasn't weak. She'd survived. Sarah moved to a new town outside Seattle. She got a dog, a German shepherd named Luna, who slept by her door and growled at strangers. She installed a full security system, cameras on every entrance. She didn't tell people where she lived, not even her co-workers. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, but she was healing. She joined a support group for survivors of stalking, sharing her story. "Listen to your gut," she'd say. "It's smarter than you think." The police called a year later. Ryan's trial was over. He'd been sentenced to 7 years. But they warned her. He'd written her name in his cell over and over like a mantra. Sarah's heart sank, but she refused to let him control her anymore. She burned the notes he'd left her, deleted the camera footage, and kept moving forward. Luna's bark, her new locks, her new life, they were her armor. Sarah found joy in small things, walks with Luna, designing logos, evenings with Mia. But the shadow of Ryan lingered. She'd never forget the moment she saw him on her bed, his eyes cutting through the dark like a blade. That image was a scar, one she carried but refused to let define her. She researched stalking, learning that 1 in 6 women in the U.S. faces, often by someone they know. Sarah shared her story online, anonymously, on forums for survivors. Her posts sparked conversations about red flags, unwanted gifts, too personal questions, that gut feeling something's wrong. She started a blog, Safe Spaces, offering tips on vetting roommates and getting help. It was her mission. The police sent her Ryan's notebook after the trial. The pages were filled with her name, her habits, her life. The last entry chilled. She'll never leave. Sarah burned the notebook, watching the flames consume Ryan's words. It felt like reclaiming herself. A year after the trial, Sarah got a letter. No return address, just her name in familiar handwriting. Inside was a single line. "I'll see you soon." Her hands shook as she called the police. They traced it to Ryan's prison. He'd smuggled it out. The warden promised an investigation, but Sarah knew. Ryan was still out there, in his mind, waiting. She upgraded her security, changed her phone number, and moved again. Luna stayed by her side. Sarah's blog grew, reaching thousands. She partnered with a women's shelter, teaching classes on personal safety. Her message was simple: trust yourself. Your fear is a signal, she'd say. Don't wait for proof. Her classes saved lives. One woman left her abusive roommate after hearing Sarah's story. That was enough for Sarah. She'd turned pain into purpose. Sometimes, late at night, Sarah would wake to a sound, a creak, a tap. She'd check the cameras, Luna at her heels, and find nothing. But she never stopped checking. The memory of Ryan on her bed was a ghost that never left. She didn't let it haunt her. She'd fought too hard for her freedom. Sarah's story is a warning and a beacon. It's proof that danger can hide behind a smile in the place you call home. But it's also proof you can fight back. Sarah survived because she listened to her instincts, because she acted when it mattered most. If it weren't for the police, she might not be here. So if you're sharing a space, look closer, check the locks, know who's behind the door. And if your gut says run, don't wait. Because some threats don't knock, they're already inside. The school bell rang at 3:15 p.m., a sharp clang that sent 12-year-old Mia Thompson sprinting toward the pickup line at Westfield Middle School. She adjusted her backpack, heavy with books, and her favorite true crime podcast player, a habit she'd picked up from her older sister. Mia loved the thrill of unraveling mysteries, memorizing tips like always trust your gut. Today her gut was screaming. A man she didn't recognize stood at the gate, holding a handwritten sign with her name in bold red marker. "Mia, over here," he called, his voice warm but oddly rehearsed. His smile was wide, his eyes too bright, like they hid something sharp. A child was nearly abducted after being picked up by a man posing as a friend's uncle at school. And Mia's instincts, honed by hours of podcasts, prickled with doubt. The man's sign was convincing, but his oversized jacket, fidgety hands, and quick glances at a black sedan nearby set off alarms. "I'm Sophie's Uncle Tom," he said, stepping closer. "Your mom said it's okay." Mia's stomach twisted. Sophie, her best friend, had never mentioned an Uncle Tom, and the carpool text from Sophie's mom felt off, too vague. The crowd of kids and parents pushed her forward, but Mia clutched her phone, hesitating. The man gestured to the sedan, its windows tinted dark. "Let's go, Mia. Sophie's waiting." Her heart pounded as she followed, her sneakers dragging. The school faded, and the man's smile tightened, his hand hovering near her shoulder. Mia noticed a child's drawing taped to the dashboard as they approached, faded like it had been there for years. "Get in," he said, his voice losing warmth. Mia's thumb hovered over her phone's emergency button, her podcast lessons echoing. Never ignore a bad feeling. She didn't know it yet, but she'd stepped into a trap, and her courage would be her only way out. The sedan's interior reeked of stale coffee and something metallic, like rust. Mia slid into the back seat, her eyes locked on Tom as he climbed. And the doors locked with a heavy click and her stomach dropped. The man posing as a friend's uncle drove her away from school, his hands gripping the wheel too tightly, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. "Sophie's at my place," he said, his voice strained like a bad actor. Mia nodded, her throat dry but her mind raced. The drawing on the dashboard, a crude house with stick figures, looked wrong, like it belonged to another kid. She spotted a small camera lens tucked into the car's ceiling, its red light blinking faintly. Her pulse spiked. "Where's Sophie's mom?" Mia asked, keeping her tone light. Tom's smile faltered. "She's busy," he said, his words clipped. The car turned onto Maple Lane, then Oakwood Drive, the houses thinning out. Mia memorized the signs, her podcast knowledge kicking. The car's floor was littered with candy wrappers and a glove, its fingers stained dark. "You're a quiet kid," Tom said, his eyes meeting hers in the mirror. "That's good." The words chilled her. She needed a plan. The car pulled into a gravel driveway, stopping at a rundown house with boarded windows and a sagging porch. "We're here," Tom said, his voice flat. Mia stepped onto the gravel, scanning the house. The front door was ajar, the air thick with dust. Tom's hand grazed her shoulder, guiding her. "Sophie's inside," he said, his tone hollow. The house was too quiet, too still. Mia spotted a landline phone in the living room, its cord tangled. Her fingers itched, but Tom was too close. She wasn't just in danger, she was in a predator's lair. The living room was a maze of shadows, furniture draped in dusty sheets. Mia stood frozen as Tom locked the door, the click echoing. The child was nearly abducted, her instincts screaming. Tom's smile vanished, his stare cold. "Sit down, Mia," he said, pointing to a couch. His voice was sharp, a blade unsheathed. Mia nodded, easing onto the couch, her hands trembling but her mind sharp. The landline phone was just out of reach. Tom paced, muttering about quiet and perfect. Mia's podcast lessons flooded back. Keep them talking. "Is Sophie really here?" she asked. Tom's eyes narrowed. "She's upstairs," he lied, glancing at a hallway. Mia knew Sophie wasn't here. She inched toward the table, brushing the phone. Tom didn't notice, his pacing erratic. "Can I use the bathroom?" she asked. He nodded, pointing to the hallway. "Hurry." Mia slipped in, spotting a cordless phone on a shelf. She grabbed it, locking the bathroom door. Her fingers shook as she dialed 911, whispering, "Oakwood Drive, boarded windows. He's not my uncle." The operator promised help, but footsteps thudded. Mia hid the phone, flushing the toilet. Tom was at the door, banging. "What's taking so long?" he growled. She opened it, forcing a smile, her heart racing. He pulled her back to the living room, his grip tight. The call was made but would help come in time. The siren grew louder, a lifeline in the silence. Tom's grip tightened, his face twisting. "You little..." he started, but a pounding at the door cut him off. "Police, open up!" The child escaped after secretly calling 911, her courage shining. Tom dragged her toward a basement staircase. "You're not going anywhere," he hissed. Mia stomped his foot, breaking free, and sprinted to the door. Police battered it down, flashlights flooding the room. "Hands up!" Tom's knife clattered down and he was cuffed. The basement revealed chains, photos of missing kids. Mia's parents held her tight, but weeks later, a note in red marker appeared under her door. "You were lucky, Mia. It matched Tom's handwriting. Police said he was in custody, but Mia found another note at school, same marker. She researched missing kid cases, finding links to a man with a sign, a vanishing house. Was Tom alone or part of something bigger? The notes burned in her mind, a warning her escape was just the start. The school bell rings and kids pour out into the crisp Ohio afternoon 2024. A 10-year-old boy, Noah, waits at the gate, expecting his mom's familiar car. Instead, a stranger approaches, a man with a warm smile claiming to be his friend's uncle. "Your mom sent me," the man says, luring Noah to follow. Noah hesitates, a knot forming in his stomach. Something's off, but the man's voice is calm, convincing. Within minutes, Noah's in a car, heading to a house he's never seen. This isn't a ride home, it's a trap. How does a kid escape when he's already in the predator's grip? Stay with me. This true story of quick thinking and terror will keep you on edge till the very last second. Noah sat in the passenger seat, his backpack heavy on his lap, as the man, calling himself Mr. Carter, drove through unfamiliar streets. He'd been convinced to leave school, believing Mr. Carter was his friend's uncle, but the man's smile felt too tight, his eyes too sharp. "Your mom got held up," Mr. Carter said, his voice smooth. Noah felt a growing sense of danger, his instincts screaming that something was wrong. The car turned into a quiet neighborhood far from Noah's home. "Where are we going?" Noah asked, his voice small. Mr. Carter chuckled, but it was cold, empty. "Just a quick stop," he said, pulling into a driveway. This was no detour, it was the start of a kidnapping. The house was old, its windows dark, the lawn overgrown. Noah's heart raced as Mr. Carter led him inside, the door creaking shut behind them. The air was stale, heavy with dust. "Sit tight," Mr. Carter said. Pointing to a couch, Noah obeyed, his eyes scanning the room. A cluttered living room, a TV flickering with static, a phone on a side table. The fear was real, the threat closing in. Mr. Carter disappeared into another room, leaving Noah alone. But Noah could hear him, low muttering, like he was talking to someone. Was there someone else here? Noah's mind raced. He'd trusted this man, but now every detail screamed danger. The locked front door, the way Mr. Carter kept glancing at him, the knife on the kitchen counter. Noah's thoughts turned to his. Mom, her warnings about strangers echoing in his head. He wasn't supposed to be here. He needed to act. He had to find a way to escape the danger. But how? The phone on the table caught his eye. It was old, corded, but it could be his lifeline. Mr. Carter's muttering grew louder, closer. Noah had minutes, maybe seconds, to make a move. His fear was overwhelming, but his will to survive was stronger. He slid off the couch, his sneakers silent on the carpet, and crept toward the phone. Every creak of the house made him freeze. Every shadow seemed to move. He reached the table, his hand trembling as he lifted the receiver. Could he do this without being caught? Noah's fingers shook as he dialed 911, his heart pounding so loud he feared Mr. Carter would hear it. He was in the kidnapper's house, trapped in a nightmare. The phone his only hope. The line clicked and a voice answered. 911, what's your emergency? Noah whispered, barely audible. I'm not supposed to be here. A man took me from school. Help me. He was secretly calling for help, his life depending on it. The operator's voice was calm, asking for his location, but Noah didn't know the address. It's a house, he stammered, with a red door and a broken mailbox. Footsteps thudded. Mr. Carter was coming back. Noah dropped the receiver, diving behind the couch just as Mr. Carter entered, his eyes narrowing. You okay, kid? Mr. Carter asked, his tone too sweet, too forced. Noah felt the weight of the danger, his body pressed against the floor, praying the operator had heard enough. Mr. Carter picked up the phone, frowning, then hung it up. Had he noticed? Noah's stomach churned. He had to escape, but the threat was closer than ever. Mr. Carter sat on the couch, inches from Noah, flipping through a notebook filled with names, addresses, other kids. The plot twist hit like a punch. This wasn't random. Mr. Carter wasn't just a predator, he was part of something bigger, a network targeting children. Noah's name was in that book, circled in red. Noah's mind raced. He'd seen a back door in the kitchen, half hidden behind a curtain. If he could reach it, he might make it out. But Mr. Carter's eyes were on him, watching, waiting. "You're a good kid," Mr. Carter said, his voice chilling. "You'll do fine." "Do fine for what?" Noah didn't want to know. The phone rang, startling them both. Mr. Carter answered, his face darkening. "Who is this?" he snapped, then slammed it down. The 911 operator was calling back, trying to trace the call. Noah saw his chance. He had to act to escape the danger, his heart pounding as he inched toward the kitchen. Mr. Carter stood pacing, muttering about messing up the plan. Noah crawled, his knees scraping the carpet, every second a gamble. The back door was closed, but Mr. Carter turned, his eyes locking onto Noah. "Where do you think you're going?" he growled, lunging forward. Noah bolted, slamming into the door, fumbling with the lock. It opened and he ran, the cold air hitting his face. His call to 911 was his lifeline, but would help come in time? Noah sprinted into the night, his legs burning as he fled the kidnapper's house. His secret 911 call had given him a chance to escape, but Mr. Carter was close behind, his footsteps pounding the pavement. "Come back here," he shouted, his voice a mix of rage and panic. Noah's lungs screamed, but he didn't stop, weaving through the dark neighborhood, his eyes locked on a distant streetlight. The danger was still real, Mr. Carter's shadow looming in the moonlight. Noah ducked behind a parked car, his breath ragged, praying for sirens, for help, for anything. His quick thinking had saved him so far, but the nightmare wasn't over. Then, miracle, flashing lights in the distance. Sirens wailed, growing louder, closer. Noah peeked out, seeing police cars screeching into the street. His 911 call had worked, bringing help just in time. Officers swarmed the house, their radios crackling. Mr. Carter froze, then bolted, but the police were faster, tackling him to the ground. Noah stumbled out, sobbing, as an officer wrapped him in a blanket. "You're safe now," she said, her voice steady. Noah's mom arrived minutes later, her face pale, pulling him into a desperate hug. He'd escaped a kidnapping, but the fear would linger, a scar on his young heart. The police searched Mr. Carter's house, uncovering the notebook, a chilling list of targets, Noah's name among them. Mr. Carter was part of a trafficking ring, preying on kids from small towns. Noah's call had not only saved him, but exposed a network, leading to multiple arrests. His bravery became a local story, a testament to quick thinking under pressure. The danger of the stranger's trap was a lesson etched in his mind, a warning to trust instincts, to question strangers, to fight back. Noah's mom never let him out of her sight again, and the school tightened security, haunted by how close they'd come to losing him. Noah, at 10, had faced a monster and won, but every unfamiliar car, every stranger's smile would remind him of that day. The terror of the kidnapping attempt stayed with him, a shadow he'd carry forever. Trust your gut, check who's picking you up. One wrong move can change everything. The clock strikes midnight, and the New Year's Eve party in a cozy Ohio home is electric with laughter and clinking glasses. Two friends, Jake and Lila are at the heart of the celebration, dancing under twinkling lights, oblivious to what's waiting below. Then a sound cuts through the music, a low rhythmic creak like a heartbeat coming from the basement. They freeze, hearing a creaking noise from the basement, their smiles fading. It's not the party. It's something else, something wrong. What's down there? Is it tied to the relative who passed away in that house? This isn't just a party gone wrong. It's a descent into terror that'll keep you hooked till the end. What did they find? And why won't they ever go back? Jake and Lila stood still amidst the New Year's Eve party, the festive chatter fading as the creaking noise from the basement grew louder, more insistent. It wasn't the house settling, or a guest stumbling. It was rhythmic, deliberate, like something alive. Was it connected to Lila's great-aunt who died in this house years ago? The thought sent a chill down their spines. Jake, always the skeptic, forced a laugh. "Probably just the furnace," he said, but his voice wavered. Lila, her eyes wide, shook her head. "That's not the furnace, we need to check." The party carried on, oblivious, but for them, the air had shifted. Something was calling from below. They grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen, their hands trembling. The basement door was tucked behind a coat rack, its paint chipped, its knob cold. Jake pushed it open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The creaking grew louder, echoing up the steps, each sound tightening the knot in their stomachs. They were drawn to the noise, terrified, but unable to turn back. Lila clutched Jake's arm, her breath shallow. "This is a bad idea," she whispered. But curiosity and something deeper like a pull kept them moving. The stairs groaned under their weight, the air growing colder with each step. At the bottom, the basement was a cluttered maze of old furniture, dusty boxes, and cobwebs. The flashlight beam danced across the shadows, revealing nothing at first. Then, they saw it. In the corner, a rocking chair was moving on its own, back and forth, its wooden frame creaking in perfect rhythm. No wind, no strings, no explanation, just the chair, rocking as if someone sat there watching them. The sight tied to the memory of Lila's great-aunt, who'd spent her final days in that very chair, her eyes always fixed on the family she loved. Jake's mouth went dry. "That's impossible," he stammered, stepping closer. Lila grabbed his arm, her nails digging. "And don't," she hissed, her voice barely a whisper. The chair didn't stop, it sped up, the creaks sharper, almost angry. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing against their chests. Something was here, something that knew them. The fear was palpable, the mystery of the chair's movement gripping them. Was it a trick? A prank? Or was Lila's great-aunt still here, her presence lingering in the house she never left? The rocking chair's movement grew frantic, its creaks filling the basement like a heartbeat. Jake and Lila stood frozen, gripped by fear as the mystery deepened. Was this really Lila's great-aunt, still tied to the house where she died? The chair rocked faster, its wooden arms glinting in the flashlight's beam, as if daring them to come closer. Jake, his skepticism crumbling, reached out, his hand trembling. "There's got to be a reason," he muttered. But before he could touch it, the chair stopped, dead still. The silence was worse, heavy with menace. The terror of the unknown held them in its grip, their breaths shallow, their eyes locked. On the chair, then a whisper. Not from the chair, but from behind them. A voice, faint but unmistakable, saying, "Why are you here?" It was soft, almost sad, but it wasn't human, not entirely. Lila gasped, spinning around, the flashlight, beam slicing through the dark. Nothing, just boxes and shadows. But the air shifted, colder now, like a presence had brushed past them. The connection to Lila's great-aunt felt undeniable, her memory woven into the house's very walls. Jake's voice cracked. "Did you hear that?" Lila nodded, tears in her eyes. "It's her. It has to be." They backed away, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. But the chair started again, slower this time, deliberate, as if mocking their fear. The sight of the chair moving on its own was burned into their minds, a puzzle with no solution. Then something worse. The flashlight flickered, its beam stuttering, plunging them into near darkness. Lila screamed, grabbing Jake's hand. "We need to get out!" she cried. But the basement felt different now, like it was closing in, the walls pulsing with something alive. The whisper came again, closer, from the corner where the chair sat. "Stay," it said, clearer now, laced with longing. Jake yanked Lila toward the stairs, but a box toppled behind them, crashing to the floor. Papers spilled out, old photos, letters, all from Lila's great-aunt. One photo landed face up, her great-aunt, sitting in that very rocking chair, her eyes staring straight at the camera. The link to the deceased relative was no longer a question. It was a fact. The chair creaked louder, faster, as if responding to the photo. Lila's knees buckled, her sobs echoing. "She's here. She never left." Jake pulled her up, his own fear choking him. They had to leave now. But the plot twist hit like a sledgehammer. As they reached the stairs, the basement door slammed shut above them, the lock clicking with a finality that stopped their hearts. No one was up there. The party was too loud, too far. They were trapped. The fear and mystery of the chair's movement consumed them. But now it wasn't just the chair. The whole basement felt alive, awake, angry. The whisper returned, no longer sad but commanding. "You shouldn't have come." Lila's great-aunt wasn't just haunting the chair, she was haunting them. Jake and Lila pounded on the basement door, their screams drowned out by the party above. The terror of the rocking chair's movement lingered, its creaks echoing behind them like a taunt. Was Lila's great-aunt trapping them, her spirit tied to the house she loved? The air grew colder, the whispers sharper, circling them like a predator. "You can't leave," the voice said, now clear, almost pleading. Lila sobbed, clutching Jake. "She's angry. We shouldn't have come down here." The mystery of the chair and its connection to the deceased relative consumed them, a truth they couldn't escape. Jake kicked the door, his desperation rising. "We're getting out," he shouted, but the lock held firm. The flashlight died completely, plunging them into darkness. The chair's creaking grew louder, closer, as if it had moved. The fear of the unknown was unbearable, their minds racing, with images of Lila's great-aunt, her eyes fixed on them from beyond. Then a new sound, a faint rattle from the door. Someone was upstairs. Jake pounded again, screaming, "Help! We're trapped!" The door flew open, revealing a confused partygoer. "What's going on?" he asked, oblivious to the horror below. They stumbled up the stairs, gasping. The party's warmth a stark contrast to the basement's chill. The music blared, the laughter unchanged. But Jake and Lila were different, haunted. They told their story, but no one believed them. "It's just an old house," a guest said, laughing. But they knew better. The rocking chair's movement wasn't a trick. It was a message, a warning from Lila's great-aunt, still bound to the home she'd never left. They grabbed their coats and fled, vowing never to return. Days later, Lila's cousin visited the house to check. The chair was still, but the basement felt wrong. Cold, heavy, like it was waiting. He found more of her great-aunt's belongings, a diary, hidden in a box, describing her love for the house, her refusal to leave, even in death. The connection to the deceased relative was undeniable. her spirit woven into the very walls. Jake and Lila never spoke of that night, but the memory lingered. Every creak, every shadow, a reminder of what they'd faced. The mystery remained, unsolved, a chilling truth about the world beyond. Check your basements, lock your doors, some guests never leave. Still here? Then congratulations, you're braver than most. We've just journeyed through 10 doors into the darkest corners of America's real-life horrors. But believe me, this is just the beginning. There are countless more stories. Never told, never aired, buried deep and waiting to surface. Some are too terrifying to be believed. Others, too real to be denied. If your curiosity still burns and your nerves haven't snapped yet, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell, and stay close. Because the next chapter might be even closer than you think. You never know. The next story could be about you.